Stephen A. Smith goes off on Sheryl Swoopes and exposes her unprofessional attitude toward Caitlin Clark. Stephen A. Smith is known for speaking his mind. More than once, this has gotten him into some hot water with other people. Recently, he took to his podcast to talk about how Sheryl Swoopes has been behaving extremely poorly toward Caitlin Clark. That is not a shocker. Swoopes has been throwing shade at Caitlin for a while. However, it seems as if some of Stephen A's critiques struck a nerve as Swoopes went off on him on her social media. But Stephen A is not someone who shies away from a yelling contest. In fact, he lives for these kinds of back and forth. So it was not surprising to see him go off on Sheryl Swoopes for calling him a coward. By the end of this video, you will see why Swoopes should have just minded her own business instead of trying to get under Stephen A's skin. To put things into perspective, this is what Stephen A. Smith had said about Swoopes.
The Fever currently lead the WNBA in average game attendance and per game TV viewership. But despite the attendance and viewership records, there seems to be some haterade in the league in regards to Clark, starting with WNBA legend Sheryl Swoopes herself.
Now, Stephen A is referring to Swoopes' extremely biased take on Indiana's recent rise in the standings. Swoopes refused to give Caitlin any credit. In fact, she didn't even mention the rookie. Swoopes showed how petty she can really be when she decided to credit players like Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston, who have also been great since the team's return from the Olympic break. But there was never a mention of the Fever star point guard.
We don't want to address the big elephant in the room, but we ain't gonna run from it today because Sheryl Swoopes made news. Now, she made news last week when she sat up there and was applauding Indiana Fever players, but then forgot to mention Caitlin Clark.
Stephen A has always been big on giving Caitlin Clark her credit. After all, she is a transformational player.
But we just have to understand that when a transformational figure enters the fray, you got to pause and then isolate and compartmentalize and give them the love that they're due. And in this case, it belongs to Caitlin Clark. Rookie of the Year race is over. She ended that Friday night. Not that she wasn't in the league to begin with, but she ended that Friday night.
Sheryl Swoopes did not appreciate Stephen A's criticism one bit. On her social media, she said, @Stephen A. Smith, don't do that. If you got something to say, call me. Or better yet, bring me on your show. Y'all are so funny. If I mention her, I'm hating and y'all want me to keep her name out of my mouth. If I don't, I'm hating and y'all want me to mention her. But her rant was just getting started. Soon after, she said, @Stephen A. Smith, by the way, you new to this, I'm true to this. Implying that Stephen A has only recently started covering WNBA because of the buzz surrounding the new generation of players. Meanwhile, Swoopes has been part of women's basketball for decades and is one of the best players of all time. Swoopes wasn't done just yet though. She also took issue with Stephen A calling her a hater. You talk about whomever and whatever you want to on your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players and they deserve recognition as well. Now, she does raise a fair point there. Most of the WNBA coverage does revolve around Caitlin Clark. There is a reason for that. It's because she generates the most eyeballs and clicks. So naturally, everyone wants to cover everything that Caitlin does and accomplishes. In that regard, Swoopes is doing a good thing by trying to shine a light on other players. However, this argument would have been better if there wasn't a history of Swoopes hating on Caitlin since her college days. However, Stephen A took an issue with this point.
That ain't the point, Sheryl Swoopes. Yes, I did listen to your entire podcast. You didn't mention Caitlin Clark. So I was right, number one. Number two, your personal relationship, what that got to do with your coverage? Ain't nobody said don't mention them. Ain't nobody said don't applaud them. Nobody told you to ignore them.
That is the main issue right there. It is clear that Swoopes has her biases, which is natural. Everyone has their biases. However, when those biases get in the way of your job, that is when things get murky. She has doubled down on her hate, which really calls into question why the former three-time WNBA MVP has an issue with Caitlin. In fact, her hate even caused a rather awkward moment on air when the Dallas Wings took on the Las Vegas Aces on NBA TV. While Clark obviously was not a part of the game that Swoopes was calling, she did make a brief cameo during a stoppage in play as play-by-play man Ron Thulin noted the WNBA Players of the Week. As Thulin called attention to Clark's impressive week in which she averaged 25 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds, Swoopes remained noticeably silent, not saying a word until play resumed. While Thulin was the one who started the read, there were multiple dead spots in the brief segment that one would have expected the analyst's voice to fill. Typically, the play-by-play person tells you what is happening and the analyst provides his or her insight, which did not happen in this instance.
Got to go to the Players of the Week. Both of them had outstanding weeks, and they're the next two opponents to the weeks. Caitlin Clark will be here on Sunday for the week, averaged 25, and Avisa Collier averaged over 25. And of course, the Lynx here Friday at 6:30 on Ion. And then the Fever come here at 3 o'clock before a sellout crowd. Tough stretch for Dallas.
It's like Swoopes is allergic to giving Caitlin her credit.
How you gonna mention the Indiana Fever without Caitlin Clark's name even coming up? So then after that, Sheryl Swoopes engages in levels of immaturity. There's no way to slice it. I'm not gonna insult this champion, this great basketball mind, this phenomenally accomplished Hall of Famer. I'm not gonna insult her. All I'm gonna say is it was pretty damn immature to come back at me like that.
Her response was pretty immature. But what else can you expect from someone who cut out a friend from their life because they disagreed with her? Now you can tell this is an ego thing, because when Nancy Lieberman tried to help her out and make her do the right thing, Swoopes essentially ended their friendship.
And so our relationship it pretty much is not happening at this point. I tried to talk to her at the Final Four. Right. She didn't want to talk to me. My life's going to be good or great with or without Sheryl Swoopes in my life. I'd rather have her in it.
Stephen A. was especially irate over the fact that Swoopes had called him a coward when all he was doing was pointing out how Swoopes was being unprofessional. He never went low. He never attacked her. He simply pointed out that she was doing a poor job.
Called me an effing coward? Because I called you out for not doing your job? So you on a podcast, that means you don't have to do your job? I mean, the bottom line is this: she engaged in a level of immaturity. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, to just bite at me like that, why? Because what did I say? What did I say?
Again, what did you really expect from someone who blatantly lied about Caitlin Clark and her accomplishments in order to push her own agenda?
So if Kelsey Plum set that record in 4 years, well, Caitlin should have broke that record in 4 years. But because there's a COVID year, and then there's another year, you know what I mean? So she's already had an extra year to break that record. So is it truly a broken record?
What Swoopes is talking about here is the women's all-time scoring record that Caitlin set, and in doing so, broke Kelsey Plum's previous record. However, Caitlin actually broke the record in less than 4 years, so Swoopes was hating for no reason. But it didn't end just there.
Like he or she's killing them, but you have a 25-year-old playing against a 20-year-old. Like, you should be killing them. Yeah. Because you've been doing it a lot longer than they have.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, but I know she can come back another year.
Here she is blatantly lying by saying that Caitlin was 25 years old when she was dominating in college, when in fact, Caitlin is only 22 years old. At least if you are going to hate, you should do it cleverly so that it's not so obvious. No wonder the fans are seeing right through Swoopes' arguments and calling her out for her misinformation.
She's the one that brought her professional objectivity into focus by her own behavior. What possible excuse could you have talking about the Indiana Fever and nary a mention of Caitlin Clark? How is that possible? How's that possible? You know what Indiana was before she arrived?
Now, in case you did not know, Indiana already has as many wins this season as it did a year ago, and is tied for the 4th most victories in the league since the start of July. Caitlin has also etched her name in the league's historical records. Against the Seattle Storm, she set the record for most assists by a first-year player, passing WNBA legend Tisha Penicheiro with 12 games to spare. She also has the most assists in a single game, dishing 19 dimes. Now, along with the record for the most consecutive point assist double-doubles in a rookie season, the most double-doubles by a rookie guard, the first rookie to record a triple-double, the single game leader in three-point field goals made by a rookie, and she is the youngest player to record a double-double with points and assists in back-to-back games. Denying her greatness, well, that's just silly.
But I also understand why people would look at her like she's lost her ever-loving mind. Because you're literally putting the lack of professional objectivity on display for audiences to see, and then you're looking at us acting like what's wrong? It's like you spitting in people's face telling them it's raining.
Instead of giving Caitlin credit for elevating her teammate, Swoopes is pretending to ignore her impact. This is pretty blatant as well, seeing that when any other playmaker improves their team's efficiency and helps brings out another level of play, they get the credit, but not Caitlin. This is one of the reasons why many people are siding with Stephen A over Sheryl Swoopes, despite Swoopes having a Hall of Fame pedigree. You don't need to know the ins and outs of basketball to see when someone is hating or not. There is simply no reason not to give Caitlin credit for what she has been doing.